rather.
Yeah, we're gonna get back. We're gonna right now get back. Like where I left last in the last video was in a lot of the jobs which men have historically worked and taken up. Those are the jobs which no one wants to work. Like even today, like when you are taking up housework or when you are taking up work which you can do from home, when you are taking up work which like is like textiles or being a midwife or being a healer. First of all, these are low effort. Second of all, you get to constantly interact with people, and of course, with housework, you can gossip and socialize with others. In childcare, again, it has massive emotional payoff. But in the kind of work men have historically done, there is still emotional investment. But while there is a material reward, you cannot use that material reward to get what you really want, which is the emotional validation of your child, which is problematic because he or she has simply bonded more with the mother, so they are still gonna love the mother more, and not gonna get the real stuff which you have wanted. You are not gonna get any emotional, feedback from the people you are working for. You're not gonna get the expected emotional feedback from the person you want the emotional feedback from, right? Like your child, like not to the expected degree. Like we all love our fathers, but the reality is we don't nearly love our fathers enough, and we should sometimes
Yeah,
really.
yeah, our love to our fathers isn't as unconditional and as instinctive as it is to our mothers.
Yeah, and this honestly needs to change, and this always being the case is it's quite sad, and really fathers do get less emotional return than our mothers get, and this is something we should really take into consideration. Like, I know a lot of you people can have bad lives. I know a lot of people a lot of people listening to this might not have gotten the best looks genetics or height genetics, but still today, if you are in contact with your father, give him a hug, thank him for whatever he has done. There's a lot of times when men like him don't see a lot of light at the end of the tunnel other than you, and you are one of the reasons that they have continued their life. So yeah, thank them, even though your life has not been perfect, and you can blame them for it, but at the same time you can thank them for what they have done.
Yeah, also a lot of people assume there are a lot of jobs that men
Criticism
do
and
nowadays.
blaming for something doesn't mean you cannot appreciate what they have given you.
Yeah, also like a lot of people out there assume that but men still do jobs that are not as labor intensive and not as demanding. They do this job. The thing is, let's say programming, all right. Let's say you are a software engineer or that shit. Do you know how much maths it requires to be a data scientist? The amount of mathematics and your ability to deal with numbers and with large amount of data, that takes IQ again, A, and B,
That
it's
actually
not
takes
easy
physical
job.
effort.
Yeah, no, not physical effort, mental effort. The
Yeah.
amount of mental effort it takes in a desk job, not just data entry, like in an actual, like where you are getting paid $200,000. In that type of jobs, you actually need to invest your brain. Your mental power is actively being used. Why? It's not any different than an engineer. Not any different than a regular engineer. The amount of mathematics it requires and the proficiency with numbers that
Yeah,
it
and what
requires, you
I'm
simply
talking
can't
about
achieve
is
them.
for the right reasons, men were historically, like they're today, paid more than women, and this created a dependency of sorts of women on men. Now, this was much more pronounced back in the day, and it still exists. That is one of the major reasons even today women settle for some guys they're not attracted to, because after a certain age, physical exertion is difficult, and this would have been even more pronounced back in the day when you had even worse equipment. And here's another thing, back in the day when you did not have equipment, when you had to do much more physical labor, yeah, even textile was more physically demanding, so women couldn't do that forever, right? Even if they were taking part in that industry, so you needed to have children. You also did not have life insurance, you did not have old age homes, you did not have governments taking care of you when you were older. No, do you know what the governments did in their free time and whatever extra money they got? They bought concubines,
Uh,
they invaded other countries. That's what they did. They invaded other countries and used that money they got from invading other countries to loot even more countries. That's what they did.
Also, people tend to forget that the labor-intensive jobs that were done back in the day didn't stem from the fact that they had to oppress women. It stemmed from the fact that women are just not as efficient as men were back in the day into their jobs. Even today, like a lot of
Like,
places
even if
where
back in the
men,
day women took part in activities, now this is my problem with the trad wife movement, because these people will say, oh, this is traditional, because yes, men working more and men being the primary provider is, and women relying on men is traditional, but it's not traditional that the woman sits at home all day and doesn't do anything that gets any amount of money. That was only limited to the 50s and 60s. Both of these are unnatural, if you compare the modern environment and the 50s and 60s. Like, while it is true that in the medieval era, now also on the flip side, while it is true that in the medieval era, women did contribute monetarily to an extent, it was not like the efficiency was on the same level. Like we have discussed this in depth. The efficiency of women would have been lower. The physical differences would have eventually come into play. So women still had to depend on men. It was not like today either. Just like it was not like the 50s and 60s that women got to choose on the basis of looks and height. They still had to choose on the basis of how good of a provider a man was. They still had to choose on the basis of how long he was going to stick with her.
yeah, also the fact
And
that
then
they bring
it was required for them to have
like
children. Like, listen to me. In the medieval era, your children were your life insurance. In the medieval era, your children were your old age home. Your children were your like caretakers in your old age.
I mean, they still are in third world countries.
Yes.
Also,
So
the fact of the matter is, like, a lot of feminists scream their lungs out that, but women also do jobs, they also take care of child, and they also do housework. The thing is, men also do a lot of housework. Just because it doesn't count as housework, like fixing the roof, like mowing the lawn, like like shifting the furniture from here and there, just
again, it
because
is
it
the
doesn't
most
count.
labor intensive aspect of it.
Yeah, fixing the bulb or fixing minor electrical appliances, just because it doesn't happen daily does not mean it's not a chore, a house
And
chore.
honestly, what I've also noticed is, in a lot of places, men also tend to do a lot of the marketing which has to be done. No, not marketing, shopping. I used the wrong word. Men do a lot of the shopping which has to be done on the hottest summer days. This is actually a very common thing where I am from in Bengal. It's actually a common thing that the husband or the house elder, the man of the house, he goes out to get the fish and the veggies if it's a hot summer afternoon. They don't get the woman out of the household to endure the heat of the May or June sun beating down on them. This is something which people wouldn't tell you, and this is a daily thing. This is a daily thing. It is half an hour of probably the most physically exhausting aspect of housework in the May and June heat in the afternoon or early morning.
Yeah, just because the time invested is less, it makes the amount of work same by the sheer intensity of the work. Because let's say household work, the equation of household work is intensity
If
times
I don't know if you have
in
noticed this a lot, it's oftentimes that the young boys of the house or even the older men of the house, they do more in places where you have more manual methods of water collection, where you have to fill up containers and fill your home the household tank. It is entirely done by boys. It's almost entirely done by boys.
yeah, because again being like younger and supposedly having more strength, more endurance, more stamina.
Yeah, like these things also count as housework, and they often require more physical effort. Now,
Yeah,
this is a
just maybe
clarification which I want to make. The average medieval or ancient woman, it was not like she was sitting at home all day just raising her children and cooking 5 course meals. That was first of all not possible because most people did not have that luxury. Second of all, it's also not like they had full freedom to choose on the basis of looks and height, and like 50% of them were single by the age of 30. Because there were other constraints like growing out of your peak, aging out of your peak, not having life insurance, not having the government play husband, do the physical effort for you, or not requiring to do physical effort at all. So men were required in the medieval ages, and it was again not because women were oppressed. Women needed men, and to an extent, one might say, yeah, of course, men also needed women. It would be delusional to say that men absolutely do not need women. If it's not for the necessities, then it's for some of the more secondary basic needs like procreation and companionship. Those are important, those are also important. Like most of the time people were cooking gruel at home, but again men were still getting paid more because men were taking on the jobs much more, which were physically demanding and emotionally taxing. Let me get this straight to you
And
guys. Even today, the jobs men do are more emotionally taxing. People often mention that women do most of the emotional labor. They don't tell you that for the emotional investment, they get the emotional return. But whatever emotional investment men make, they do not get an emotional return.
they get a huge ass middle finger right up their ass from their employer.
And honestly, we as children, we sometimes fail our fathers, like failing to see. Like my case is different, you know. My case could easily have gone different because I am a case of a guy who was abandoned by his father. I would have probably had those similar bitter views of men as a man myself, because that happened in my life. But then someone else showed up in my life, my maternal uncle. He raised me. I understood how he had to give up his hobbies for this responsibility because he could not just see me like float away and drift away in life. He gave up a lot of his very dear hobbies like coin collections, stamp collections. I've seen that sacrifice from up close. There is often, I come across an argument that women have to give up their personalities and who they are as a person to be a mother. Now, this is partly true. We do not often become what we want to become. Who we as a person want to become often does not come to fruition. But again, this doesn't just involve housework. I've mentioned previously that 96% of people never end up working the jobs they wanted to work as children, anyways. Men do have to leave behind parts of their personalities to become fathers, to become good fathers, and this is something that I would end this video with.